Welcome to Health Matters with Dr. Nelson Bulmash, sponsored by the UI Radio Network at uiradionetwork.org. Catch us on Facebook and Instagram at United Intentions and Twitter at Higher Intention. Look for us on 99.1 FM, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, and many more. Over the next hour, we'll introduce you to some fascinating people and engaging discussions that may provide you with answers to assist in revolutionizing your own personal health. And now, here's Dr. Nelson.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Nelson Bulmash. I'm the host of Health Matters on the UI Media Network. I hope each and every one of you had an amazing holiday weekend. For those of you who are recovering from last week, I had a pretty crazy show, pretty great show. We had a lot of really good feedback. We're going to have another wonderful show today. We're going to be talking about money, so put aside any of your notions about what that means. I know when we talk about things like money, it brings up lots of ideas. Some people go sideways in a negative way. Some people get happy. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about money from a perspective of using it as a transformative vehicle to help you to acquire the goals, the dreams, the aspirations that you have, so that you have the money you need for anything from vacations to weddings, bar mitzvahs, dreams, folks. The things that dreams are made of. So it's been said many times, money isn't everything, but it sure does make life a lot more fun when it comes to playing. You need money to play, folks. So we're going to talk about how to get it, how to protect it, how to manage it today. So don't touch that dial. I have a few opening announcements, and then I'm going to interview my friend of many years. And we're going to have a great conversation. So hang tight. First of all, if you're new to my show, Health Matters is designed to talk about all things great regarding health, inspiration, and spirituality. If you're unfamiliar with me, which I hope you're very familiar at this point, since I've been doing many of these shows now over more than the last year and a half. I'm a chiropractor, naturopath. I have trained world-class athletes. I'm a writer and a nutritionist, to get to name just a few things. So as we go forth today, we'd love for you to connect with us. And first of all, I am still getting question after question about how to connect with us if you miss the live show, since a lot of people are finishing up at work at 5 or just getting into their cars at 5. The easiest way is to go to uimediaapp.com, download our smart app, and that way you can catch each and every show, not only of my shows, but of every host here. And let me tell you something, we have some amazing hosts who are interviewing guests that are incredible, not only from this part of the country, the Southeast, but throughout the United States, and more guests from around the world. We are expanding very, very quickly. We are the media hub that deals with improving your life one conscious intention at a time. That's what we're here for, and we do so through our shows and through our many activities. In a second, I'm going to tell you about a big one that we have coming up, and I want you to feel free to be part of it. We'd love to have you there. So if you'd like to connect with us online, you may certainly do so on the social media platforms of Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can connect with us by looking us up under United Intentions and Higher Intention on Twitter. If you'd like to connect with me personally, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook under Dr. Nelson Bulmash. Now you can finally purchase our Conscious Journal. Plan your day intentionally with our Seeds of Intention Daily Conscious Planner. Visit us on www.unitedintentions.org to learn more. And don't forget, I'm going to remind you now, and I'm going to remind you at the end of the show, that this Thursday we have Dr. Amy Dairies as she interviews founder of one of our big sponsors here, Plus CBD Oil, Stuart Tomk. And that'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, folks, I want to tell you about the big event that we have coming up. Save the date, July 20th. We'll be at Gate City Brewing Company. Join us for lots of fun and good times. Go to UI Media Celebration Party on Facebook and respond there. We hope to see you, folks. This is going to be an amazing opportunity for you to do the following things. You're going to meet some really inspired people, some very successful people. It'll be an amazing networking opportunity. And let's face it, we're a lot of fun to be with. So you're going to have a lot of fun. Save that date. Remember, July 20th. More information about that to come. All right. My friend and guest today is Frank Kelly. investment advisor representative, retirement planner, and financial educator. Frank Kelly has assisted thousands with their retirement planning needs in the greater Atlanta area since 2002. He's led hundreds of public educational workshops on retirement strategies and trained other advisors across the country. As a fiduciary, Frank is an investment advisor representative with Retirement Wealth Advisors. He has a Series 65 securities license as well as a life, accident, and sickness insurance license in Georgia. Frank is a member of the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors and has been a member of the Million Dollar Round Table, and has a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Virginia. All right. Frank, thank you for being my guest today.
That sounded really good.
It is really good. It's you. It's really a description of you, my friend. It's your bio, and you are very, very good. I have known Frank for almost 30 years now. We go back a long, long time. And I have him here because he is very successful at what he does and in life. Frank, I have to tell you, I pulled your article here. And
yeah.
Frank just got published in December of last year. He was published in Forbes.
Right. Forbes.com.
Forbes.com. That's right. And you have a really very interesting article here. Did NASA or Tarzan plan your retirement? 3 pitfalls to avoid. I have to ask you where that name came from, because if anything, it is very original.
Well, thank you. I was trying to go for that, but
right.
When I got asked to write an article for them,
yes,
they say, write what you know, right?
Yes.
And I have a long history with NASA. My mother actually worked for NASA for her career, as you know, and even when I was a teenager, I had summer jobs at NASA, which is incidentally how I found out I was never going to be a scientist. So that's a long story in and of itself.
Yes, it is.
But so that's where the inspiration for that part came from. And I was just trying to write about things I see happening, things to consider when you go to do your retirement plan. It's a big topic for a lot of people. Is I'm going to retire someday. I'm not going to work one day. I'll go home and I won't go back to work the next week.
Right.
Whatever that is. And but it's such a daunting task. I mean, if you think about what retirement actually is, how many projects in your life do you have that last decades worth of looking forward to them, and then possibly decades in the implementation of them?
Right. Not many. I mean, I think you have maybe marriage.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Right?
Hopefully. Right.
Right.
Maybe raising your kids.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
in my case, I can actually say my health pursuits. I have been starting. I think it was 4 or 5 years old when I got started. My dad tricked me into training, and I've been involved ever since then. So I can actually say for decades now, and I continue to do it, and will do so for decades more. So those are my 3.
That's a long-term project.
Yes.
Right. And you have it like a project. I know, because of your health matters.
Health matters.
Right?
That's right.
So, but when it comes to money, even though it's something that we deal with every day.
Right.
I mean, you're either, have enough of it that you don't think about it much, which is a great blessing if you're in that space, or if you're like most of us, you have some level of concern, or maybe a lot of concern, depending on where you are at life, and
yes.
it changes.
Yes, it does.
Life.
Yeah, life is one of those things that sometimes you feel safe and you feel protected, and then all of a sudden you blink your eye and your roof needs to be replaced, your driveway might need to be repaired, and your heating and air goes out.
So anyway, so that's why I came up with the idea for the article. For NASA, is such an inspiring idea. Just the fact of space travel.
Right.
I encourage people in my article to relate to their retirement as a space journey, not as a finish line. Most of us if you think about retirement planning, you say, okay, how am I going to get here from here to there? What day is that going to be?
Yeah.
Right. That's usually the obsession.
Right.
If you have your thoughts on it at all. Right. Or you're saying to yourself things like, well, maybe I'll never get there. I'm not sure if I can retire or when I can retire and how well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's a lot of people. But when it comes to most people's vision of retirement, it's kind of like the guy in the desert. So if you can imagine for a minute, there's a family in the desert driving a car.
Right.
Okay. They're on vacation. Who does that? Did you ever take a vacation in the desert?
Yeah, I've actually been that weird guy who has.
Okay, so you actually may have had this experience.
Yes.
But most of us, we go to the beach or we go to the mountains.
Right.
Okay. And you're in the car, you're driving through the desert, and the whole family's with you, but you're not concerned because you have this beautiful, large, maybe a luxury vehicle that you rented with
Yes.
great working air conditioning, and you're stopping all along the way, and you're seeing all of the cacti and the flora and the fauna, and you're seeing animals that you didn't know existed, and it's like being on another planet a lot
Right.
of times when you go to
Yes.
the desert. I've only
Yeah.
been in the desert a couple of times, but let's say it's like that. And so the next day you get up and you're going to drive to Death Valley, right? So you're going to take a trip to Death Valley,
Right.
and it's a couple-hour trip through a lot of nothing, right?
Yes.
And you're not concerned because you're having a great experience. And about an hour into the trip, there's a blinking light that goes on the dashboard. You know what blinking light that is?
Well, it's got to be either the gas or it's got to be that you're overheating
Yeah,
in Death Valley. One or
Yeah.
the other or both.
yeah. Well, let's just take the case it's the gasoline. So
Okay,
the
fair
fuel
enough.
indicator is saying you forgot to put gas in the car that morning,
Right.
right? So
Right.
you've got maybe 2 gallons worth to get someplace,
Ouch.
okay? And maybe there's 50, 100 miles to the next station, all right?
Right.
So what's happening now in the car is the whole family is up in arms. I thought you were going to put gas in the car. No, you were the one who wanted to get out early. There's
Yeah.
arguments happen.
Sure.
And then the air conditioning might turn off. You say, well, we're using up too much fuel
Right.
turning on the air conditioning. So we're gonna lower the windows. And then the driver, if it's somebody like me, who says, it's pretty flat here in the desert. I figure if I can just gun it up to 100 miles an hour, maybe we can just coast all the rest of the way to the gas station. And then, if it's my wife on the other side, she goes, no, you got to slow down, conserve fuel, maybe 40 miles an hour is it. And then my son, who has a smartphone in the back, is saying, well, no, actually, for this vehicle, it's 55.7 miles per hour is the optimal fuel efficiency. All of the people in the car know one thing. They all know that the car is going to
Run out of gas.
run out of gas.
Right.
We just don't know when.
Got it.
And so that's the experience for a lot of people when they haven't done any planning, right, in their relationship to their retirement. They think they're going to run out of gas.
Sure.
So that's why I encourage people to take it on like a much bigger deal. It's going to be a multiple decade project, hopefully.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to retire in this country, where all the blessings that we have.
Right.
Think about it. Retirement didn't even exist the way it does today about 100 years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You just had people with money and people without money.
Right.
And what we call retirement now is just what rich people did. Right. You had the time to not have to go to work to support your family.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really a blessing either way. But we don't really relate to it that. It's like this chore, it's this daunting thing. And if anything out of today, we can look at it as creating your future, just having the power with, creating what's next in your life. And that's how I like to relate to retirement.
I like it. So I still want to talk more about the title.
Yeah.
And by the way, the folks who don't know your mom was a legend, by the way, in NASA.
She really was. Yeah. I'll brag on her for a minute.
Brag about her for a minute. I mean, this is one of those situations where his mom is somebody that really was so legendary in NASA that everybody should know a little bit about her.
Well,
take a moment and tell us about your mom.
You remember that movie Hidden Figures?
Yes.
Where you had the first people of color who were promoted at NASA.
Yes.
My mother was the first Asian mission operation manager in NASA history.
Wow.
Okay. And she was also the first female mission operation manager. It's funny because mission operation manager is mom for short.
Right.
She was the first female mom.
Yes.
Right.
I love it.
And that was in relation to her work with the space shuttle program back in the 80s. There's videos of her giving presentations that are still available on YouTube and things like that. Just obviously really wonderful career. When she retired, or actually she never retired. She passed away 4 years ago, unfortunately. But when she passed away, her business card read Constellation Manager for the Earth Observing Satellites, which is a collection of 10 different satellites and internationally. So she managed international projects with a bunch of scientists in other countries, almost like an ambassador for NASA. So
wow,
that was the inspiration.
I have one more quick thing before we take a break. Tell our listeners and our viewers what happened during your mom's funeral service, and then we'll take a quick break.
Well, not just at the funeral, but for about a year after, the scientists would give. They would have their regular scheduled meetings for the scientific communities that she managed, and they took an hour or two out of their meeting just to talk about her, to present slides about pictures of her and how she had helped all these different professionals in Japan and Germany and all these other countries in helping them with their space program.
Well, there's one more thing I want to say, and then we'll jump into the program. Folks, Dr. Nelson Bulmash here. You're listening to Health Matters. I'm talking to my guest, Frank Kelly, and we're talking about you and your relationship to money and how we can empower that. We'll be right back.
Have you ever wondered, why are we here? What is the purpose of life? How can I make a difference? The answer is unique for each of us, but the same: to make a difference in the world. And how we each approach it is unique to us. That's the philosophy photographer and author Peter Taremi has adopted with his latest book, Year of the Flood, a photographic narrative of life on the Cincinnati riverfront. He found his path walking down the river with a dog named Murphy. The river presented a canvas to work on his art, but there was a dark side to this idyllic landscape. Through the Murphy Cam Project, he created a book to raise awareness and to fund organizations working to support the community. Year of the Flood is available on his website, petertaremi.com. All proceeds will support Our Daily Bread, a soup kitchen in Cincinnati. Visualize your purpose and support Peter Taremi and the Year of the Flood.
Hello, welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. You're listening to another edition of Health Matters. My guest today is Frank Kelly, and we're talking about finances, money, how to generate it, how to manage it, and how to protect it. Frank, and folks, I'm doing this in part because I got to say I knew Frank Kelly's mother, and she was the epitome of excellence and brilliance. She was a delightful, humble, highly brilliant woman, one of the most intelligent women I ever knew.
Thank you.
Tell us one more quick story about her. If
This is what you were referring to earlier.
Yes.
I'd forgotten. She actually, one of the many things that happened around her funeral was that NASA honored her. They were already giving her some awards when she died, but she won awards every year. But they sent her a flag that had actually ridden on one of the space shuttles that she had been managing projects for.
Yeah, as I recall, as a matter of fact, it was the last flag ever flown by the Endeavor. Wasn't it the Endeavor?
I don't even remember which one
I think
it was,
but
it was one of them.
Yeah. The last one ever flown in a mission.
Yeah.
I love that story.
It's pretty amazing.
Definitely. All right, Frank, let's go into this. So we talked about NASA. What's up with Tarzan?
Tarzan.
Let me go through the title again. I love this. Did NASA or Tarzan plan your retirement? The three pitfalls to avoid. So we're looking at obviously the brilliance of space travel as getting to your retirement with that kind of level of sophistication and such. And you juxtaposed Tarzan to NASA. There you compare them, I should say. Tell us about how you came up with that, because that's fascinating to me.
Well, it's easy for me because I talked about my mother. I'll talk about my son now. My son Christopher is 12.
Yes.
And as you may remember, he's a very active athlete. He's you've seen the TV show The American Ninja Warrior?
I love it. I have.
Christopher, I showed him that show when he was 2 or 3.
Right.
And ever since then, he's pretended he's on the show. And then we've actually been on the show as guests, cheering for the people that coach him. So he's very heavy into that. He competes heavily in it. And, a lot of the competition is swinging from one thing to another thing and grabbing one thing, another thing. And so that's where the image of Tarzan came from.
Okay. Love it.
The way it applies to retirement planning is a little different. So Tarzan obviously is a literary figure that's been around for over 100 years. And we all know the story, right? Tarzan the Ape Man. Here's Tarzan. He's grabbing a vine, right? So he's going to swing from this vine and he's going to jump out and he's going to grab another vine, right?
Yes.
It's going to get to the next one and the next one all the way through the forest. Right. Well, do you think that Tarzan ever has some second thoughts about what he's doing? I mean, I've never seen it. Right, but you watch the movie. He says he's taking that thing and he's jumping out.
He's pretty committed, isn't he?
There's no backing out.
Yeah.
Right. So he's grabbing that vine and he's swinging to the next one. Does he ever think to himself, "What happened if vine break?
Yeah.
If vine break, do Tarzan fall?" Right.
Right. Does he have a backup plan?
How good are your assumptions?
Yeah.
right? So when I meet with people, we look at what kind of planning they've done, if they've done any,
Right.
which most people haven't, honestly, or they've got the rudiments of it. But then we look and see, okay, how good are the assumptions that make your plan work, right? So, for example, if it's a business owner, a lot of business owners plan on selling their business one day, but they don't have a specific plan, or maybe they've overestimated what their business is going to sell for.
Right.
Okay. Very often that's the case because they're too busy generating their business to think long term.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's things like, all eggs in one basket. If you have an investment that did really well, right? Or one aspect of your portfolio that's doing really well, you don't think about diversifying, right? So Tarzan is making decisions. You're maybe not giving it a second thought because things have worked so far.
Yes.
But as you approach retirement, it's useful to re-examine those assumptions that you've made just to see if they still work going forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Got it.
And so that's a very useful concept when I meet with people. I like to talk about Tarzan too because everybody can relate to him.
Sure.
And sometimes I show videos of my son when I meet with people too, just to.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. So I got it. So
Just
you've
'cause I
got
like looking at
the
it, probably.
sophistication with NASA of looking at every variable, every detail, and nothing can.
Oh yeah.
Nothing can be missed, because if they do, then our astronauts may overshoot the moon, or they may land and never be able to get back.
They might not get, like in that movie Apollo 13.
13, right?
If you remember, there's tons of man hours to go to the moon, and they say that retirement planning is often more difficult than going to the moon. I don't think so, really.
But I get the point. You have, how do you account for all the variables? Yes.
And one of the variables is that they change the law. You can have everything set up to work according to the way the tax laws are now, and then they change something major and it affects your planning. It's good. You have to adjust.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. So let's go forth here in the article, because I want to talk about your 3 pitfalls. And then what I'd like to do, Frank, is I'd like to talk about different concerns in different age categories, if we may.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first pitfall is relating to retirement as a finish line. Instead, think of it as space travel. Talk to me about that pitfall.
Well, as I mentioned, that's the whole NASA thing. But as far as the pitfall of it, people aren't thinking about how long they're going to live in retirement. So people are living a lot longer, as you know.
Yes.
You're a doctor. I mean, people are living, especially if you go see Nelson, you probably live an extra 10 years. There's a little plug for you.
Thank you.
But, even if you don't see Nelson, you're probably going to live longer than you expected to.
Or you'll certainly feel better and function better getting to that point.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's been my experience. But if you're looking at retiring, I mean, you got to have enough fuel for the journey. Okay.
Right.
So not worried about running out of gas. You want to have fuel to get you off the ground.
Yes.
And the correlate to that for fuel is income. So think of income as your fuel.
Okay.
In retirement.
Got it.
And it's a pretty good analogy, actually. So you take getting off the ground. You need a booster rocket just to get you off the ground.
Right.
And get you into the air a certain amount. Then there's a secondary rocket. They used to have stages of rocket, right? So the second stage gets you either into orbit or, to a certain level.
Right.
And then there's a whole nother rocket that activates to get you out of Earth's orbit, heading toward the moon. Okay. Then you have to have enough fuel to come back from the moon.
Incredible.
Okay.
Absolutely incredible.
So, and retirement's a lot like that. There's different stages of retirement. There's the initial stage, there's a preparatory, and then there's the initial stage. And a lot of times the fuel is something like a pension or Social Security. It's great if you can have pension, but pensions have changed a lot in the last several years as far as private pensions.
Yes.
Back in the 80s, when I was starting in work, 60% of private companies had some kind of a pension offered. You know what the number is today?
Let me guess. It's probably less than 10%.
6%.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So unless you're fortunate enough to have a job that pays you a pension, like teachers or the government or something like that, it's a very rare thing. It's going the way of the dodo bird. But we look and see, everybody's got a different situation. So when we look at their situation, if that's there, it's a great thing. We use it. If not, you've got to create your own income.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a paycheck. That's the most unique thing about retirement.
Yeah.
Is that you show up the next week and you don't have a paycheck. Right. So where are your bills getting covered from?
It's interesting that you say that. I have 2 friends that see me, a husband and wife, and they're mid-60s at this point. So she's retired. He's not. He's a really sharp guy. Very, very good at what he does. He's a consultant. And she came in one day and she was really, really stressed, Frank, about not having the money for insurance. And
Yeah.
I said, I get it. Even though, you have only the two of you, I remember checking with my wife, and she did a lot of investigation. Insurance was going to cost us $20,000 a year. I mean, that's an enormous amount of money to me to generate just for insurance for one variable, right? So we started doing the math, and over a 20-year period, it was $2 million
Yeah, it's nuts.
that they needed for the insurance in their age category. And I thought, that's insane. So, once again, I get that rocket scientists, once you figure it out, might be easier because the variables essentially don't change, like tax law, like how much the insurance is going to cost, and what kind of hidden things are going to come up in illness and so forth.
Yeah. And it's just you. It's not, you don't have a team of engineers working on your,
Yes.
on your retirement plan. And most
Right.
people don't actually work on their retirement plan. It's something they put off
Yeah.
or they have an idea about.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump in here to your second pitfall, letting Tarzan plan your retirement. Why is that such a bad idea?
Well,
I mean, he's a pretty cool figure.
Other than
he
it's-
seems to catch every vine. He doesn't seem to miss a vine.
because there's only one Tarzan.
Yes. Yeah. Very true.
So, but I mean, the point of that is to re-examine your assumptions, because everybody has assumptions about, if you have been putting money into a 401k, which I recommend everybody do, if you have a 401k available to you,
Right.
do all the things that advisors tell you to do about saving money, get into good habits with saving money, take advantage of matching funds and things like that. But if you have, a certain amount in your portfolio, let's say
Right.
you've got $500,000, $1 million, or $2 or $3 million even, and it feels like you're on a good track. Okay, you might have an assumption that it's always going to keep going up because the market, for example, has, with recent exceptions every so often, it's just been going up for the last 10 years. So you think that your portfolio will just keep going up without a whole lot of, people forget what happened 10 years ago,
That's right. Yeah.
and then another few years before that, right? So
Yeah.
the closer you get to retirement, those assumptions really get called into question, and you want to look and see what's the right allocation for me, what's the right mix. Do I have enough stuff going on that it's really going to work? Do I need to up my game as far as how much I'm saving? Do I need to just rearrange things?
Yeah.
So that's where the assumptions come from. Also, the assumptions about how much it's going to cost to live in retirement. So people think that they're going to spend less. You see all these commercials on TV that say, "Oh, you should plan for," I've heard, 30% less income in retirement. Really?
30% less income?
Yeah. I mean, people can make that work, right? If they don't have to drive to work and they don't have to.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
They could subsist on that, but do they really? I mean,
It's certainly not your dream retirement.
is that the inspiration that they had when they were little? Is it one day I'm going to have to cut back because I'm worried about running out of
Yeah.
money?
Right.
Right. So that's where the real problem is with the assumptions. And the closer you get, I mean, when you're young, you can have a wide margin for error. But when
Yeah.
you get closer and closer, when you get into your 50s, like I'm 52. It starts to narrow down the
Right.
field of what you can do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's good to have that examined by someone, or just take a good hard look at it for yourself. But it's a very challenging thing to deal with all of your assumptions, and other people can often hear the assumptions that you can't hear yourself making about your plan.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So it's much better to have somebody to address those assumptions, to certainly at least see if you're correct in assuming what you're assuming, so that your retirement can go in the direction you want, not whether the vine is going to hold as
That's
you
been
reach
my experience.
For,
Yeah, my experience is that, I mean, you
For
could
the
do
next
this
vine.
yourself, but why would you if there's so many people who are able to
qualified.
listen to you and figure out something that works with you? It doesn't mean you have to, completely rely on every word somebody says or completely hire someone. But it's always good to bounce your ideas off of a professional who does it every day.
Yeah.
Just as when people are
Absolutely.
looking at their health, it's
Right.
good to talk to somebody who's
Look,
knows something about health.
the truth is the time we live in is way too complex. I mean, everybody specializes in something unique.
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean, I could never do what you do. I would have no idea even where to begin. Now, I mean, if I studied, I could, but that's not going to happen. So why would I do that? Why would I not defer to somebody with your background?
I know even less about what you do, and I've been seeing you for years.
Years. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, get a word in from our sponsors. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. You're listening to Health Matters, and I'm interviewing my guest, Frank Kelly. And we're going to talk about his third pitfall, comparing yourself to others. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to be the hero of your own story? It's time to put the power of your health back into your hands. Join us for our free 25-day journey to get your life back now from chronic illness. Our doctors and experts will guide you back to optimal health.
We're an explosion not only in healthcare, but everything else. But let me just tell you a few startling statistics. Cancer and heart disease are neck and neck in epidemic, pandemic proportions. 1 in 2 men and 41% of females. It's the number one killer 1 to 85 years of age. 1,600 people die a day, not a month, a day. And it's getting worse by the day. But I have good news. Do you know that you can completely, with a very high, I want to say 99%, because there's nothing ever 100%, with pretty much a 99% success rate, prevent and early detect cancer. And guess what? No one knows about it. I am going to tell you today the secret.
Go to www.getyourlifebacknow.live and begin your journey today.
Hello, folks. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. You're listening to another edition of Health Matters. My guest today is Frank Kelly, and we're talking about all things regarding money, how to get it, how to manage it, how to protect it. Frank, your third point is comparing yourself to others. And I'm going to quote your article. You wrote this. Mark Twain said, "Comparison is the death of joy." He was a wise man indeed. So was Teddy Roosevelt, who called comparison the thief of joy. We get so obsessed with comparing ourselves to others. Tell us why that's such a bad pitfall.
Well, particularly with money, right? Because a lot of times people will be obsessed with, how they're doing on their own, or maybe they're not even thinking about it, but then they hear about someone else who's doing well.
Right.
And maybe that person's doing better than you are, or maybe they're not even, but they did something.
Yes.
Right. And you say, oh, well, how come he's got that car or that whatever that is?
Right.
Right. And I don't, how come they're. So the other pitfall in comparing yourself, it's not just comparing yourself with other people. I mean, that's easy. Everybody knows somebody who's bigger, stronger, faster, has more money, smarter. That's just a general unhealthy way to live, right? Is to live just in comparison to everybody else. But if you're thinking about, most of the time people are comparing themselves with themselves and what they ought to have done. Yeah. Right.
Yep. That's a trap, isn't it?
What they ought to have done is usually an extension of something they hear somebody else say.
Yes.
Okay. But what they're really saying to themselves is, oh man, I should have not spent that money on that thing.
Yeah.
I've got about 800 of those in my life, right? So, but there's.
You live conservatively, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. I've been very careful.
Right.
Only 800 mistakes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, in 52 years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I got plenty of time to make more, right?
Right.
But the point is that you've got all of these decisions that you later question, like I should have done a better job of saving. Yeah. Right. Or I shouldn't have had this, whatever, a divorce or a business decision that went bad, or a bad job choice. Right. Any of the things that we relate to, like they're mistakes. And it's really disempowering. You have people who are successful professionals. Maybe they're in the top 1%. And they'll come into my office and they'll be apologizing to me for how bad things look. Yeah. And they really should have had their act together more.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter if they've got nothing or if they've got a few million. It's the same. It's almost always the same kind of conversation about what they could have done better, what they should have done better, what they didn't do that they ought to have done, like they didn't they didn't buy this stock at the right time, you know, or they sold this one and they should have hung. I don't care about any of that.
No.
And you know what? Nobody else does anyway.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
You got to go from where you are.
Yeah. As an old coach and good friend of mine used to say, you have what you have, right?
Right.
And you don't have what you don't have.
Yeah.
Right. And then you did what you did, right? You certainly did, right? And then you also didn't do what you didn't do, did you?
That's right. You can't do what you haven't done. Right.
You can't not do what you didn't do, right?
Yeah.
So who cares? I mean, all that's left after you look at it, just today, and what do you do next?
Yeah.
That's all it is. And then the really great thing about working in this space is that I'm able to help people see that they can actually have a say about how their life goes. They can actually create their future from right now. And a lot of times it's really great. They discover that they can have a much better view of retirement or a much bigger vision of retirement. They can spend more time with their families, right? They're not obsessed with worrying about whether or not they'll have enough money, okay? Or, you know, they'll be able to plan in things like, I want to be able to devote my energy and time to this or that charitable cause.
Boss, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's an amazing thing when people actually see that they can retire and not worry about it, not worry about not being able to pay their bills for the rest of their life.
Right.
It's a big deal.
Well, all right. So I want to change gears here. Now, by the way, I was laughing a moment ago for a very specific reason. I don't remember if it was you or if it was our friend Jack, who is no longer with us, who said that you had a client who came in who was upset that they'd only generated $25 million. Was that you that told me that story?
I think it was probably Jack.
Okay, it was Jack.
But I know who
yeah, you know
what
I'm
you're talking about. Yeah.
Gentleman came in. He was disappointed in his life with regard to financial success because he had only generated $25 million at the point where he was really looking at kind of tightening things up for the retirement phase of his life.
Yeah, but a guy like that, he's looking at people like Jeff Bezos, right?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you know, I'm nothing. I'm nothing compared to that guy, right?
Got it.
It's craziness. It's just craziness.
Yeah. Good. Very, very good point. So let's switch gears.
Okay.
I want to go back in time. Let's say that here you and I we're out of high school, right? You know, we're going to go back quite a bit here, folks, quite a bit.
I had more hair. In case anybody's watching this on the video.
You had more hair.
I had a lot of hair.
So we're going to go back in time. And what I want to do is I want you to talk to me, in this case, you advising me, as somebody in my late teens or early 20s. How do you advise somebody who's just getting out of high school, maybe not even sure about what they want to do, whether they want to go to college, whether they want to go to technical school? They're unsure. What kind of things would you educate a person? Like, you know, you can go back in time and educate me as a 20-year-old.
Well,
what would you tell me to think about regarding the generation of money, the management, and the protection of my money?
Yeah. Well, you specifically, who knows? Because you were quite a wild creature back then, from what I understand. I didn't know you back then.
Yeah, very true.
But, you know, for the general population, there are certain things that work. One big thing when you're young and maybe just getting out of school or finishing college or whatever, you want to develop an allergy to debt.
I like that, an allergy to debt.
Yeah, you want to be extremely highly allergic to debt. You want debt to be something that throws you into spasms and something like that. The sooner that you develop that allergy, the better. If you have a high tolerance for debt, it's not going to go well later. So the reason that you want to have an allergy to debt is because it'll teach you to live within your means. If you can live within your means, and then you can start to save some money. And, you know, if somebody that young, you don't have to do as much.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you save 5 or 10% starting out of your paycheck, put it into savings, create an emergency fund. I saw an article recently that said that 1 in 3 Americans would have a problem funding a $400 emergency. Is that ridiculous?
I've read articles like that. It's sad, but it's true.
Even if that's exaggerated, it's just ridiculous.
Most people are spread far too thin these days financially. Yeah,
so you don't want to be that person. So you can actually create a reality where, hey, I'm always going to pay myself first, right? The things I'm telling you are nothing new, but for a young person, it's crucial that they develop good habits early. And what do they say? It takes 23 days for an action to become a habit if you repeat it.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't take very long, right? But it goes the other way too. So if you have bad habits financially,
Yes.
it's like smoking.
Yeah, they spiral out of control.
It's just like smoking financially. It's like financial smoking, right? If you think about the side
Yeah.
effects later on,
Sure.
it shows up in your end game 30, 40 years later, and to what kind of a vision you have at that point and what the limits are for your retirement.
Right. You know, it's
So-
funny. My kids are so infinitely beyond me when it comes to their finances. And I don't know where they get it from. It wasn't me. I still am so limited. I can fix your body if it breaks, but finances is like this black hole that all the information has been sucked into some vortex and removed far away from the present for me. For example, my daughter wanted to make sure that she paid for her college. She didn't want to have any debt. She watched how I struggled for
Wow.
years with my school debt, particularly my doctorate. And so she said aloud to me one day, she said, "Dad, I got to find a job that makes me the kind of money, and I can't make minimum wage. I'll never. It'll take me years, and I'll go into my PhD program in debt and so forth, and I'll end up taking 20, 30 years to pay it off like you did." And I said, "Yeah, you don't want to do that." So she looked and realized that one of the jobs that she could do that which she would make a lot of money was being a nanny. And she made so much money, if I'm not mistaken, she's either paid off her college already and is now working on her PhD, or she is nearing the end of paying it off and will have it paid off. And now, of course, is getting a stipend that handles all of her, right? So she's teaching while she's working on her PhD
Right.
in biochemistry and getting that paid for. So in effect, she should graduate and not owe any money in her education.
That's so ahead of the game.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I was, what am I going to bench press my next workout?
How old
Which
is your,
vitamin are you
How
gonna-
old is your daughter now?
24.
So when I was 24, I had just made my first job change.
Right.
Okay. And the company I was leaving at the time had just introduced 401ks right as I was leaving.
Right.
So I only had time to put a couple of paychecks worth of donations in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple $1,000s in the 401k.
Right.
I think it was almost 24, right?
Yeah.
And at the time I was tight on cash. I was taking a vacation. I said, I could start another one after this, right?
Right.
So what did I do?
You used it, didn't you?
I took it out. I spent it on vacation.
Oh, you didn't.
I don't remember what drank it into. I probably drank it, or
Yeah,
ate it,
at the beach or
whatever.
something.
I spent
Sure.
it on a bunch of luxury items.
Ouch. There's
Nothing
probably lost
memorable.
$100,000 in today's money.
Not much that I'd remember from it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But I mean, it's kind of it's typical. And later on, when I got into the field, right, and I really started looking at the numbers, because intellectually you understand the power of time and compounding interest,
right? Yes.
Or gains over time.
Yes.
But that $2,000 that I burned, even if I didn't touch it again, right now I'd probably have at least 6 figures.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay.
Right.
Just leaving it to grow. So,
Yeah. And here-
I'm not immune. Nobody's immune from making those kinds of
Yeah,
mistakes.
I get it. I mean, here now my son is in medical school, and he set it up so he got so many scholarships that he had money to invest. So not only did he graduate from his undergraduate with no debt, but he was investing money to
He's
help
got
pay
a
for his medical
portfolio.
school. Yes.
Yeah, your kids are kind of on the outliers. They're not like normal
wish,
kids.
Right. And I wish I could take ownership of this, but my wife and I we're great at a lot of things, but not investing. That's why I'm learning a great deal from you. And my younger daughter saw what they did, and now she's ahead of where they were.
That's crazy.
Emergency fund, and then a fair amount of money for investing already.
My son asked me not to talk about him too much, but the name of my company is called CFK Financial.
Yes.
And CFK stands for his initials. It's Christopher Francis, right?
Oh, I love it.
So I was a little worried last year when he told me that if he wasn't able to go on the American Ninja Warrior show and win the $1 million prize,
Right.
because maybe the show wouldn't exist at that point, or maybe
Sure.
he just didn't win.
Yep.
That his backup plan was he was going to play point guard for the Portland Trail Blazers because those NBA guys seemed to do pretty well. So that was his. That was his retirement plan.
Christopher, you are an inspired young man. I like that about you. Many other things.
I encouraged him to continue doing his homework at that point.
Yes. Well,
Although he's quite a player. But
I get it. I like that he's so inspired, though.
Yeah.
And he has such self-confidence.
I don't want to be a dream killer.
Right. No, I get it. All right, folks. We're going to talk more here shortly. We're going to talk about next what kind of things you look at in your 30s and 40s, and then we're going to finish up with what kind of things you do in your 50s, 60s, and beyond. We'll be right back. We're going to take our last commercial break. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash, and you're listening to Health Matters. My guest is Frank Kelly.
With all of life's stressors, it can be challenging to stay balanced and healthy. Hemp-derived cannabinoid, or CBD supplements such as Plus CBD oil, are becoming well recognized as a key supplement to optimize wellness. By working directly with our own internal system that maintains homeostasis, the endocannabinoid system, CBD, can help restore the body's natural rhythm when we need it the most. Learn more about Plus CBD oil and how to balance the system that balances you from www.pluscbdoil.com. That's www.pluscbdoil.com.
Hello again, Dr. Nelson Bulmash. Thank you. We've returned. I'm interviewing my friend Frank Kelly, and we're talking about generating money, managing your money, and protecting your money. Frank, let's jump in here and let's talk about the thoughts that you want to inquire about when you're in more your 40s and 50s regarding the generation, management, and protection of money.
Yeah, because before that, it's just really about saving as much as you can, and you can afford to be a little aggressive with your investments as long as you're diversified. Pretty much the market will grow over time as a safe bet. It's not guaranteed, but it's a safer bet. It's worked for decades, right?
Right.
And you have a large window or margin for error. But when you get into your 40s, particularly your late 40s and your 50s, and retirement starts to become almost a goal, it becomes less of a concept, right?
Yeah.
So the
It's on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I turned 40, things got really real. I became a father at 40.
Yes.
But I also, think, I was like, oh, how many years of work do I have left?
Right.
And then again, even though I've been doing this for a long time, at 50,
Yep.
things felt extremely different when I turned 50. I was like, wow, if I want to retire when I'm 62 or 65 or 67 or whatever that number is for people, what do I have to do now? Right? So one of the things, there's a couple of considerations. One is when you're getting into your 40s and 50s, it's really useful to start examining your lifestyle costs. Even if you don't have a strict budget, it's a good exercise to get familiar with your approximate living expenses. And sometimes people are shocked by what they're actually spending, or they think they're spending more than they are.
Right.
But either way, it's good to get in touch with that. So that's one of the more useful things that we do with people in that age group is we figure out what's their current lifestyle, because their retirement lifestyle is very often an extrapolation of their current lifestyle with inflation added.
Yes.
Okay. And then they might be dropping some things, like a mortgage might get paid off, a college loan might get paid off if they're taking that on for somebody or something like that. But you can start to figure out, oh, well, what kind of income will I need? In other words, how much fuel am I going to need to get off the ground when I get started?
Yeah, when the
it
rocket
becomes
launches.
an equation. It becomes much more of an equation at that point. So you can still be aggressive into your 40s. When you get to your mid-50s and beyond, or depending on how soon you're going to retire, that's when it's time to start looking at how you're allocated. Is my allocation, which was like pedal to the metal, aggressive?
Yes.
Is that still appropriate right now? Okay.
Sure.
It may or may not be.
Right.
It may or may not be. So it's good to look at that with somebody who can actually analyze that, look at your portfolio, look at what it's likely to do, and start building in some diversification, starting to have it be in a more of a balanced attack toward retirement, so that you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket planning wise, right? So you can start to really get strategic. And then as you get into your late 50s or even into your early 60s, and you're getting close to the rubber hitting the road, it's really about what's the best way for me to set it up to not worry about income. All right. What financial vehicles do I need? There are lifetime income vehicles. There's income just from your investments, right?
Sure.
Do I just want to float on top of this pile of money and take out what I need and take out more in good years and less in other years? Or do I want to set up a baseline of income? A lot of my clients like to have almost like a pension for themselves. They create their own pension-like income that they can't outlive out of part of their money, right? So
that's interesting that can be done, given that there are so many people now that are living into their 80s, 90s, and beyond.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. And then kind of navigating through what the options look like. It changes on a
the yearly basis?
Yeah. Even more often than that. because these
Wow.
companies are very competitive with each other, the different companies that have offerings like that.
So I want to ask you some questions. One is it really feasible anymore to think about retiring at 62 or 65? Is that realistic anymore for most people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, depending on when you're thinking about it. Were you 32 when you were thinking about it, or were you 60?
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment because, and you're the expert here. Most of the people I know don't seem to really even get started until they're at least mid 40s,
Right.
maybe 50.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's when people. It's when they start taking it a little more seriously.
Yeah. I mean, do you agree with that, or do you have a lot of people who start doing the let me look at this, let me see where I want to go financially, let me
Yeah.
start investing much before 45?
Not so much. Not so much. Maybe they're good. Maybe they're doing it themselves, saving in a
Like a
retirement
401k
plan. Yeah.
or a Roth IRA or something?
Right, which you should always do.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
as much as possible. If you have a match that's being offered to you, take advantage of the match. If you have Roth and you're younger, and it's offered to you, consider putting some of your money to work in Roth accounts versus the tax deferred accounts, because then later when you take the income for life, it's always going to be tax free.
In the Roth.
In the Roth, yeah. So
Got
those
it.
options are very, compelling. I don't know how you feel about this, and we won't get into a big political discussion, but the government seems to have spent the money already. And so tax rates are, if you look at the tax rates, they're at a fairly low historic ebb,
Okay.
right? And you never know, in the next administration, tax rates can go right back up again
Yeah, sure.
because they've spent the money. So looking at things like tax-free vehicles
Looks
for
really
later,
good.
huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge difference. Yeah.
And I don't know much about this. How much at this point, and I'm sure this changes, can you put in something like a Roth IRA per year?
Well, it's not that much, and there's limitations if your income is too high, right? So you can put about $6,000 into a Roth, and then a little bit more depending on your age if you're over 50 years old.
So that's
Okay.
not a whole lot of money.
No, exactly.
I guess that would be very good if you started when you were maybe 25 or 30.
Right. But that's a Roth IRA. Now, the other option is if you have a 401k and part of it's a Roth, and a lot of people are not aware of this because that law only changed in the last decade or so.
Right.
Okay. Where more companies are offering a Roth option, you could actually have some of your 401k or 403b, whatever the case might be, go into a Roth option to where you're socking it away tax free. You've already paid the tax
Right.
on it, and so you can put well more than that lower limit in there. The 401ks that let you put 18,000.
Okay.
Okay.
And that could certainly add up over 30 years.
I'll tell you something. Every little bit adds up. You
Yes.
know, that's why I tell people it doesn't matter if they're, they think it's too late, or if they've already retired, or particularly if they have a few years left till retirement. There's some big things you can do that make a big difference. Little things sometimes that
tell
make
us
a big
about
difference.
We have a few more minutes left. What are some of the big things you can do?
Well, I mean, okay, so back into what we were talking about before. Just looking at your expenses, right?
Right.
The biggest determinant of how much money you'll need to save is how much you're going to spend. Because why
Okay,
did
makes
you
sense?
why did you need the money,
Yes.
right? Because you're going to have a lifestyle that's going to include. Now, one of the big things that we haven't talked about is your health, and of course, this is a health show, right?
That's right.
So I have a long-term care expert who works with my clients. Her name's Belen Hickman. She's excellent, and she works with people in getting different forms of insurance, whether it's long-term care insurance for the nursing home, or in some cases Medicare supplements, things like that. But she's an expert in this whole microverse of long-term care or those issues. There was a survey recently. Do you know a married couple of 65, what their average level of expense for health is? I know you threw out a figure a little earlier on somebody else, but the average expense for health care in this country right now for people 65 and up, it's going to add up to something like $300,000
Over what period of time?
over the rest of their lifetime.
Oh, that isn't even that. I mean, it's high, but it's
Yeah.
not as high as I thought it would be.
Right. But that's just for basic care.
Yeah. Oh, got it. Okay.
We're not
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
anything extraordinary.
Right. Like the best of the best, like the folks that I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could obviously go much higher.
Much higher. Right.
But we're just talking about the average.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most people have not thought, they haven't put that into their thinking because maybe they work someplace where they've got insurance coverage, right?
Right.
But there's always things to think about that aren't covered, right? Or
Yeah.
so that becomes a crucial part of planning. And of course, the more your finances are in stress, it affects your health.
Right.
So the two kind of work together.
There are two things that I want to mention. One is part of the reason I did this, Frank, was because it is my understanding that people who have more money in general typically have greater health.
Well, I think there's
I mean,
probably
collectively,
studies.
I'm not, in other words, I'm not saying there aren't individuals who don't have a lot of money who aren't healthy. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But I'm saying collectively, it's my understanding in some of the studies I've read that as a trend, people who tend to have more money, for example, eat better. They tend to exercise more consistently. And this tends to give them overall greater health outcomes.
And they have better access to professionals as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so, one of the reasons I wanted to do this, I want people to understand that if you have access to more money, it gives you the opportunity to take much better care of yourself. You can join the gyms you want. You can eat the foods you want. And that's critical. I mean, if you can't eat good food, it's really, really hard to be healthy. So,
matter of fact, there's studies that show that, particularly when you get into your 50s and beyond, if you've got financial stability, whatever that was asking about financial stability.
Right.
Okay. You're going to live longer. There's actually longevity studies.
Right.
That,
healthier and longer.
It bears out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Frank, you know what time it is? Final thoughts time. What are your final thoughts to share with the listening and viewing audience today?
Well, I just want to thank you for having me on the show, Nelson, and for everyone listening. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about these topics. I really love what I do, and I would encourage you to not be one of the 82% of the people that doesn't have a plan for your retirement.
82%.
82%. Okay. Let's increase that 18% number of people who actually do have something written down, even if it's just a framework or an outline.
Yeah.
That puts you ahead of the game, and it starts to become more real over time. So like any project, if you start putting it in paper and you start working on it, it becomes more real. It'll change a million times. But if there's anything that I've seen, the people who are already disciplined about planning tend to be good planners, and they tend to have good outcomes. The earlier you develop those habits, the better.
Yeah.
And so I'd encourage you, it doesn't have to be me, but if there's somebody available to you, talk to a number of people, because there's a lot of good people out there. Find somebody who you relate with well, who can listen to you and help you create your retirement plan. Don't have them create it for you. Have them help you create your own retirement plan.
Right. So be part of the process.
It is your process.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's very, very important, because one of the things obviously that does is it brings you in touch with the process of how are you living? How are you spending? How are you managing your money?
Well, it just puts it outside of your own thoughts.
Yeah, I like that.
Puts it into existence.
Well, let me ask you this. You're very, very successful. I have known you for many years. I know your track record. I know many people have used you. How can people reach out if they want to contact you?
Well, there's two ways. You can certainly find me on the internet. It's www.cfkfinancial, Christopher Francis Kelly, financial.com. On the website there, and there's plenty of information on there, and you can also email me there, frank@cfkfinancial.com. You can also call my office here in Atlanta at 678-784-4090.
Give them that phone number again.
Yeah, sure, 678-784-4090.
Frank, thank you very much. I appreciate you being on the show, and I appreciate your insights.
Thank you, my friend.
Folks, I'm going to close out, but before I do, I want to let you know that I will be here at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Tuesday. And I'm going to reach out to all my friends on WTTA 101.2 FM and thank you, listeners, because I am bringing Hal Blattman, who is nationally renowned for his work in functional medicine. We're going to talk about you folks that are suffering with injuries that you think might not be that you might not be able to recover from. So Dr. Hal Blattman, next Tuesday, we're going to talk about repairing ligaments, tendons, muscles, and other injuries.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of Health Matters with Dr. Nelson Bulmash, where we help you discover how to ignite your mind, body, and spirit connection. Join us next time when we will bring you more exciting guests and engaging topics. Meanwhile, feed your mind, exercise your body, and nurture your spirit. The United Intentions Foundation and its associates take no responsibility for the opinions and statements made by the talk show hosts or their guests.